A swatch is just a small piece of knitting used to obtain the same gauge as in the pattern instructions. Obtaining an accurate gauge ensures achieving the measurements given in a pattern. Gauge is simply the number of stitches and rows per inch of knitting. The test swatch should be at least 4 inches square to get an accurate measurement. This is why pattern instructions write the gauge over a 4-inch square, as do the ball bands on the yarn you purchase. Using the specified needles and yarn in the pattern, cast on the required number of stitches to obtain a 4-inch swatch. For easier measuring, I cast on 1 or 2 extra stitches at each end and work these extra stitches in garter stitch. Knit the swatch in the pattern stitch indicated for the gauge in the pattern instructions. For my swatch example, the pattern gauge is 18 stitches and 24 rows with 5mm needles over stockinette stitch. I cast it on 22 stitches and worked 2 stitches on each end in garter stitch and 18 stitches in the center in stockinette stitch for 24 rows. So what you do is you just take your tape measure and you put it towards the middle of your swatch. Measure between the border stitches that you knitted. Just count these V's one by one, and in this case we've got 18 stitches going in the width direction, and so that equals 4.5 stitches per inch. Then you take your tape measure to measure the rows, the number of rows per inch, again towards the middle of the swatch, and you count your V's going in the vertical direction to get your number of rows per inch. With other types of swatches, for example your seed stitch and your garter stitch, they're a little more tricky to count. So what you do is you knit up your swatch in the pattern stitch, of course, and then you just measure the whole swatch, again going towards the middle. For example, this one measures 6 inches in the widthwise direction, so you do your math calculation to figure out how many stitches per inch, and in the vertical direction to get your row gauge. And the same thing with the garter stitch. And the reason it's difficult is because with garter stitch in particular, each one of these ridges is actually equivalent to 2 rows. So that makes it a little bit tricky to get an accurate measurement. Keep track of your rows as you're knitting it, and then you know how many rows you worked, and you can use that in your math calculation.